Across the Atlantic, over a dozen warships, waves of aircraft, and thousands of sailors assemble in a strike pack going after a single target: Bismarck, Adolf Hitler's prized merchant raider. One of the largest naval operations of World War II is about to unfold. Because even if the German ship is damaged and unprotected, she is still one of the largest battleships ever built. Nearly 800 feet long, bristling with guns and shielded by enough armor, it will take nearly 3,000 shells to bring her down. The sun is still low on the horizon, yet the first salvos of the battle are already flying high across the water. From the deck of HMS Hood, British Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland scans the dark horizon ahead, searching for the German ship he has been sent here to destroy. He has some of the mightiest naval weapons to aid him in the hunt. 4 twin BL 15-inch Mark I guns, 100-ton heavy hitters capable of hurling nearly 2,000-pound shells over targets more than 15 miles away. However, the Bismarck will require an even bigger punch to take down. She wasn't looking for a fight. Instead, she was attempting to slip toward the Atlantic alongside the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen through the narrow Denmark Strait south of Greenland. But as the first British shells begin to land, the Germans realize they can't ignore the call to battle for much longer. The first British strike disables the onboard catapult used to launch Bismarck's Arado AR-196 floatplanes. The second and third pierce the bow and hull below the waterline, sending seawater cascading inside, flooding compartments, and causing the ship to list ever so slightly. Before the Royal Navy can deliver another blow, however, Bismarck roars back, sending a shell from her 15-inch guns screaming toward Hood. John Gaynor, one of the sailors in the British formation, will later recall, "As I was looking at the Bismarck, I saw all these little winking lights, and I thought, oh, isn't that pretty? Then all of a sudden, I realized that what I thought was pretty was doom and destruction in the form of about 8 tons of metal coming my way." Hood is the pride of the Royal Navy, large, fast and powerful. However, she has a weakness. Her armor is too thin to withstand the fury of more modern German warships, and it takes only a few hits from Bismarck for everyone to understand how fatal that is. An explosion erupts aboard Hood, so violent it tears the ship apart and sends debris flying across a half-mile radius. In just 3 minutes, the battlecruiser disappears, taking all but 3 of her 1,418 crew with her. In the chaos, Bismarck manages to flee from the crime scene. The Royal Navy is badly bruised, but they are not about to let the Nazis escape so easily. The smoke of the Battle of the Denmark Strait hasn't yet fully cleared, but British commanders are already calling for every available ship in the area to converge into a strike formation tasked with a single goal: send Bismarck to the bottom of the ocean. The ships Prince of Wales, Norfolk and Suffolk, which had been present in the previous battle, will soon be joined by at least 7 additional warships sailing from Scapa Flow. From Gibraltar, a task force of 3 ships, including the aircraft carrier Ark Royal, is also setting course to intercept. To further bolster the force, several more vessels operating near Greenland, Ireland, and along British convoy routes are ordered to break off their duties and head toward Bismarck's suspected position. While Bismarck is one of the fastest battleships out there is no guarantee her crew will be able to outrun the Royal Navy. Her engines refuse to push beyond 28 knots, burdened by the damage inflicted by the British at the Denmark Strait. To make matters worse, fuel is leaking, forcing Admiral Günther Lutyens to reduce speed even further to around 21 knots. The situation is so critical that any hope of Bismarck escaping into the open Atlantic is gone. Now, the ship must turn back toward the port of Brest in Nazi-occupied France before she is left stranded at sea. To head back toward Europe, however, means sailing without a companionship or any aerial support straight into the British hunting party closing in on her. By now, the best Lutyens can hope for is that the haze and clouds descending over the Atlantic will provide enough cover to slip by undetected. But as sailors look up and spot over a dozen swordfish bombers descending toward them, guided to their position by the oil trail left in their wake, they realize their crawl back to base won't be easy. The Germans cannot escape, so they turn their guns on the incoming attackers, unleashing fire in hopes of wiping them from the sky before they can drop their payloads. It's no use. Before Lutyens can clear the danger, a torpedo strikes squarely astern. It may not be the kind of hit that sinks a ship, but certainly the sort that dooms it. The rudder and steering gear are jammed, leaving the German battleship trapped in an erratic circle run. Lutyens knows what this means, and as soon as the attackers give him a chance to breathe, he reports back to base, "Ship unmaneuverable. We will fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer." Now, it is time to drive the victory home, and as night falls over the North Atlantic, the British assume positions for the final strike. From the northwest, the battleships King George V and Rodney spearhead the charge, reinforced by the cruiser Norfolk, while the heavy cruiser Dorsetshire and the carrier Ark Royal keep west and south of Bismarck, respectively. Now, the ship is effectively surrounded, ready to meet her doom the moment the sun rises over the horizon. King George V is the first ship of the final strike formation to make out Bismarck's silhouette on the horizon, sitting some 14 miles away, well within striking distance of her BL 14-inch Mark 7 naval guns. However, it is the crew aboard Rodney that launches the first strike, unleashing the full fury of her 16-inch cannons against the ship every commander in Britain wants to see destroyed. It's pointless for Admiral Lutyens to try to stage a proper counterattack. Without the ability to maneuver freely, it is impossible to position Bismarck effectively. And while her guns do roar back at her attackers, even landing shells close enough to make Rodney and King George V shudder, none find their targets. Heavy winds and violent seas only worsen the Germans' aim. Before the Kriegsmarine crew can recover, the smaller vessels in the strike force begin to close in, firing 8-inch shells until it seems as though fire is coming from every direction. Lutyens surveys the battle from the bridge of his ship, but before he can give a single order, a salvo from Rodney's guns crashes into the battleship. No one will ever be able to know for sure, but it's believed that the admiral gets taken out by this strike instantly, along with hundreds of his crew. There is no way around it. Bismarck is going down. The only question that remains is, will she sink by the hand of her own crew, or under the weight of the hundreds of British shells pounding her from every side? By now, all of Bismarck's main guns are out of service, leaving the Germans nearly defenseless as the British continue to close the distance, combining their heavy gunfire with waves of torpedoes. Amid the chaos of the battle, it becomes nearly impossible to grasp what is happening. In the aftermath, however, it will be reported that First Officer Hans Uhls, one of the few senior officers still alive, ordered his crew to prepare scuttling charges throughout the ship, unwilling to give the Royal Navy the satisfaction of claiming his beloved Bismarck. As the crew rushes to set the charges, the British ships draw to within less than 2 miles. In total, they unleash nearly 2,800 shells, around 400 of which strike Bismarck. No armor is thick enough to withstand a barrage like this. Fire and smoke engulf the ship as she begins to sink. It remains unclear whether the final blow comes from British gunfire and torpedoes or from the charges detonated within the ship. Whatever the case, before noon on May 27, 1941, Bismarck is gone, taking with her an estimated 2,000 German sailors, roughly 95% of her crew. The Royal Navy has made one thing clear to Nazi Germany. Its capital ships will not sail into the Atlantic unchallenged, forcing Hitler and the Kriegsmarine to look instead to submarines to carry out their merchant raids. The Battle of the Atlantic is far from over, but for now, the British can celebrate taking out one of the Führer's most valuable battleships and avenging HMS Hood, the ship that had once stood as the Royal Navy's crown jewel.